Well, good morning, Community Church. My name is Matt Koomen. I'm the Mosaic pastor, so we typically meet up in the original sanctuary at this time, so it's really good to be with you guys today. I want to quick Tech guys, if you could pull up the picture a minute. We've been in a series on the 10 Commandments, and we've had artists depict each commandment as they see it. And Caden Guffey did just an incredible job. He's just graduated from high school last week, but just did an incredible job of what it means to remember the Sabbath and how easily we can forget and be confused with things of this world. So he did an absolutely incredible job. I saw this earlier this week, and the longer I look at it, the more things I see pop out of it. So all of this artwork that we're arranging throughout this series is going to be just to the right side of the nursery over there. So make sure if you've missed a week to go check out those things, because it truly is beautiful to see some of these different images pop up. But if you've got your Bibles, we are going to be continuing in this 10 Commandments series today in Exodus 20. So we'll get there in a few moments. But I want to first take you back to when I was very young, in the 1930s. During that time, oh, good, you're awake. Just wanted to throw that in there, see if you were awake. Okay. During the 1930s, coming out of the Great Depression, many people started to see the rise of machines and technology and industry, and they were seeing machines start to take production to a whole new level. Things were able to get done much faster, more efficiently. All of these things were starting to be seen. And there was a guy by the name of John Maynard Keynes. He wrote an essay that was entitled Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren. And in that essay, he described a startling prediction that he thought by the time his grandkids were looking for work or going to start engaging in work, that they would only need to work 10 to 15 hours a week. Wow, right? Like, if only he could see us today, right? Like we're still working 40, 50, some of us 60 hours a week. And back in the 30s, they were looking at the production and the way machines were coming into this world and saying, okay, one man can do 10 parts a day, and this machine, if one man runs it, can do 100, right? So what if that guy could then just work 1 to 2 hours a day? And he could go home and enjoy the rest of his day with his family. Like, what a world we're about to step into, and the leisure we're about to step into. And we all know from almost 100 years from that point, we've only gone further and further into this idea of work and production. And even though we can produce way more than we ever have, doesn't mean that we're cutting back on anything, cutting back on any hours. We work and we work and we work. Now, I think some of this is okay because God designed us to work in some fashion, but it's not just to work. God designed us for more than just that. You see, those of us, some of us are even retired in this room, and from what I've heard from people who are retired, they are even busier than they were when they were working, right? Like there's opportunities out there even for those of us who don't clock in and clock out that continue to pull at our time. We're busy, and there's lots of good opportunities, but we are just busy people, and often we crave rest, right? We crave time, and even when we get glimpses of vacation or time, we are still tired from it. You see, life is busy. Life doesn't slow down, but luckily for us, God has given us a gift. And that gift is in this next commandment, and I want to introduce you to that this morning. Let's read what God designed it for. We're going to, like I said, we're continuing in the 10 Commandments series. I'm going to read through what we've already gone through over the course of the last few weeks, and that'll set the stage for where we're at today. So coming out of Exodus 20, verse 1. God spoke all these words. For I, the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in the heaven above or in the earth beneath or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations to those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall do no work, neither you nor your son nor your daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and he made it holy. I want to remind you of who God is speaking to in this context. The people have just gotten out of Egypt. They don't have homes. They're wandering around the desert. So when God is saying these things, he's speaking to people who every day have to go find water. Every day they have to go find food. So to stop doing those things could mean life or death. Right? God is asking them to fully trust in who he is, that he's bigger than all of those things. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. On it you shall do no work. You see, Sabbath is a unique one. It's a unique command. It comes in as the fourth command here, and it seems a little bit more complex than the others when we really wrap our mind around it. You see, the first one we have a good handle on, not having any other gods. Right, that makes sense because we've seen the power of God. If you've been with us in this series so far, we've understand the power that God has above all other gods. That God showed his authority in Egypt in the Exodus, saying, I am above everything you've ever seen. We can get a grasp on what that means. We can get a good handle on not having idols. God doesn't want us to try and form an image of him and be able to put that in our pocket. Or that's not what God is saying here. He has already made an image, and that's us. We are made in the image of God. So God says, don't make idols. I've already done that work. Don't try and do that. So we can get a grasp on what that means and what that looks like in our lives. And we can also get a handle on not misusing or misrepresenting God's name. Right? If we believe we are in the image of God, if we believe we're made in the image of God, then that means that we should represent him well. Right? We can get a handle on those things. Those things make sense. But this whole Sabbath thing, it's a hard one to figure out. Or what does it mean? What does not working actually look like? Because there are some things that still need to get done. Right? I'm thankful there's nurses and doctors that still keep hospitals open on Sabbath. So what does that mean for everybody? What do we do with that? What does it actually look like? And how can we actually rest? See, at first, I think it's helpful to understand there's a difference between Sabbath and rest. Often they're put together, right? Often we articulate Sabbath and resting in some way. But there is a large difference between rest, especially sleep, and Sabbath itself. Because with sleep, what happens when your body doesn't get enough rest? Right? It will, if you deprive it of sleep, if you deprive it of rest, either you'll get sick or eventually your body will literally force yourself to go to sleep. I've got 3 beautiful young girls. I've got a 4.5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And our 3-year-old, for nap times, we pulled the pipe away from her. Parents, what a traumatic experience, right? So we pulled the pipe away from her, and she will now refuse to take naps. And she's 3. She kind of needs naps yet. Naps are important to her. I would like her to take naps. It's quieter for me than in the afternoon, right? So she refuses to take naps, but her body still longs for a nap. She is young and tired and runs around. She needs that nap. And so if we ever go for a car ride, and we're to the point where we don't want her to take a nap because she goes down better at night. But if we ever go for a car ride in the early afternoon, even if it's a short one, you'll look back in the rearview mirror and see her eyelids just slowly and you're like, Macy, no. Now's not the time to go to sleep. Right? And you startle her awake and she wakes back up. 2 minutes later, you can see her eyes slowly shutting. And you're like, do not because this is going to ruin my night now if you go to sleep right now. So I'm doing the loving dad thing, like opening the window at like 70 miles an hour so she's getting pelted by wind, right? Like, wake up. Yeah, do not go to sleep here. But like there comes a point when we can only fight that so long, even if it's a hurricane back there in the back seat. And her body will eventually completely shut down. And regardless of how loud we're shouting, she will fall asleep. Because her body longs for it, her body needs it, and eventually her body will take what it desires, right? That's different than Sabbath, right? Sleep will come, but our bodies, we can actually refuse Sabbath. We can actually defy Sabbath. We may know it's important. We may think about this 10 Commandments and say, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. I love the idea of taking a day off, but we can actually defy that. We can say, yeah, God may have said that, but I don't think that's something I need to do. Right? Sleep is different than Sabbath. And I think what's interesting, even as humans, when we do get the opportunity to rest, or when our bodies long to rest, what we do is often opposite what Sabbath is. And we'll get to more about what Sabbath is. But often we think of rest as popping a bag of popcorn and turning on TV and watching Netflix and binging a show and laying on the couch. And I don't know if you're anything like me, but if you do that and get up from that, you're more tired than when you laid down first. Right? That isn't something that gives us life, and yet when we're looking for rest as humans, that's naturally sometimes what we go for. Right? Our escapes are in that. When I'm tired or emotionally and physically drained, like I tend to do those things. I love watching sports, and all of a sudden you can drown out 3 or 4 hours watching a game, right? All I want to do is turn on the TV and watch who gets the next rose next. Right? Because I'm living my life through reality TV. Like I'm so tired mentally and exhausted that I don't want to think about my life. I want to see how other people live theirs. And that is, for some reason, I think that is what's going to bring me life. And that's going to bring me energy. And yet at the end of that, I find myself only more tired and more exhausted and less willing to do things. Right? The rest, that kind of rest does not give me life. And I would assume you found something similar to that. See, maybe you're sitting out there saying, Matt, you've got no idea. Or you don't get how busy I am. You don't get the family structure I'm under. I don't get a chance to take this day that God gives us. Where would I even find the time to do that day? And I want to give you first, a partial answer, and then we'll, a fun statistic, and then I'm going to look at what Jesus has to say about the 10 Commandments, or about this commandment in particular, about the Sabbath. So this first statistic that I find wildly fascinating, it's about the Seventh-day Adventist. They are if you know church history at all, it's a branch of the Reformation. Yes, you just went through church history. I should just have you come up and quick teach this, right? So they're Protestants, okay? So we're under the same kind of bubble or umbrella as this would be like Lutherans, Baptists, Methodists. So Seventh-day Adventists also are under this we're Reformed. So we believe many of the same things, and there's just a few different ways that we do that, right? So Seventh-day Adventists, one thing they are very firm on, they believe in the Sabbath, and they practice it really well. They're very strict on it, so to the point where they believe Friday night when sun goes down, that Sabbath started. And that would then go until Saturday night at sundown. So it would be the day. I was having a conversation after the service of a guy who knew Seventh-day Adventists who were a trucking company. And they required their truck drivers to shut their truck down regardless of where they were when sundown hit Friday night. So if they were coming home and they were a half hour out, they would have to shut the truck down on the side of the road and then get their wives to come pick them up. Crazy, right? These interesting rules we articulate with Sabbath, and we'll get more into those. But these Seventh-day Adventists, they are strict on following the Sabbath and making sure that they are connecting with God and family and people on these days. Now, here's what is interesting about them in this. Seventh-day Adventists tend to live, on average, about 10 years longer than the average American. Weird. Right? Anyone else find that super? That is a weird statistic. And I started doing math in this, and for you math wizards out there, how many days are there in a year? How many days per year? Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm like, wait, that's not the math I was looking at. How many Sundays per year? Sorry, let's do Sabbath. 52. Okay, so we've got 52 Sundays per year, and an average lifespan right now in America is about 78. So if we look at 78 years times all the Sabbaths they get per year times 52, that number gets us to 4,056 opportunities for Sabbath for them. It's a lot, right? That's a large number. Now, if you take that 4,056 and divide that by years, so you divide that by 365, the math comes out to be just around 11 years longer. That's kind of weird. Is it a coincidence? Maybe. But think about this. Like, if we fully believe that the 10 Commandments are a gift from God for his people, that they're supposed to be a blessing for his people, God isn't saying, I'm demanding a day. I want a day and you're going to give it to me, and I need this day for myself. What if God's saying, it's a gift? I want you to have this. I want good things to come from this day for you. And there's some interesting correlations with people who really dive into this idea of Sabbath. So do we serve a God of coincidences? I don't think so. There's something in this. So what if we actually believe God is giving this to us as a gift? Okay, with that understanding, there's an interesting thing where I think as Americans, I think especially as West Michiganders, right, we hurry through life, right? There's so many opportunities. We're working in so many different ways. There's so many things that we want to do. And often at the end of people's lives, people say, I wish I was more present in things. Right? Some of life's biggest regrets are people not being more present. Right? I've been told numerous times, as we seem to be in the thick of it as parents with young girls, and sometimes sleepless nights, like I have people come up to me and say, oh man, cherish these moments. And I'm like, cherish what? Right? No, well, we love these girls, but it's like you do feel that, right? When you're past those stages, you're like, oh man, I wish I was more present. Right? I have that in thinking back to high school and college and in my early 20s thinking, oh, I wish I was more present. I wish I didn't work so much. I wish I didn't hurry so much through life. And I even think to this now, in the moment that I'm in now, of the things that I say no to, right? Because I'm in such a hurry, because I'm so busy, because I fill my lives with so many things. How often do I say no to my kids for pushing them on the swing? Right? How often do they run up to me and say, Dad, can you jump on the tramp with me? Can you bounce me? And I say, Daddy's got a few things going on right now. I'm busy doing this. I'm busy doing that. To reading one more story to him at night. Even thinking to sitting on the couch and putting my phone down and having a conversation with my wife about the things that matter to her. Right, to helping a friend at a project at their house. Because I'm looking at my project list at my own house thinking, I don't have time for that because I've got all of these things that I've lined up in my own life. See, what if God said, I have a day for you, one day a week, where you can slow down and enjoy these things that I've given you, where you can be present in your lives and watch your kids grow up and enjoy retirement and enjoy the things that I've given you because there's a day set aside for that. The Sabbath is truly a gift. But the question in it is, how do we use it? Right? What do we know about it even first? And I think what's most fascinating is we, even together in this room, bring in our personal experience from Sabbath, the way we were raised, the things that we learned Sabbath was, even watching our parents and them watching theirs, and the rules and regulations that encountered Sabbath. Right? My mom always talked about on Sabbath, for her, they had a pool in their backyard. So they would love to go swimming. They had I've got a bunch of aunts and uncles, and they would love to go swimming. But the rule on Sabbath, the rule on Sunday, is you could go swimming, but you may not splash. Okay. Yeah. So they would wade slowly into the water, and then they would stand there and be in the water. Like, oh, wow, that's crazy, right? Isn't it? I had a few other conversations even today. So one woman said, I could not use a scissors on Sabbath. Yeah, wild, isn't it? Another one, they could not watch TV on the Sabbath. Anyone not allowed to watch TV? Unless the Sound of Music was on, because that has a nun in it or something. Crazy. That is wild. Another conversation I had, so one woman said that they, even on vacation, right? Like one woman said they could not go swimming on vacation. They could go and look at the lake, but they could not swim in it, even if they were camping. Another one had a cottage on Silver Lake. And their parents weren't as strict, so they could go swimming, but they would often go with friends who were strict, so their friends had to watch them swim. So they were on their shore while they were playing in the water, and their friends were just like hating on them, like, oh, what are we doing, right? What are all these different rules and regulations, and all of us come in with different rules and regulations about the Sabbath. Some of them, you couldn't ride your bike on Sabbath. Anyone? Yeah, how dare you ride your bike on the Sabbath? That doesn't make any sense at all. We could play outside but not be loud. One of them said this: my buddy's grandma stored the boat in their barn, and they weren't allowed to fish on Sundays, right? So they would sneak in and steal the boat to fish on Sunday nights after church. So Dave Goering, you need to be around when we talk about no stealing. Sorry, I didn't mean to single you out in front of everyone. But for those of us who were raised in the church, we bring in some of these weird rules and regulations about Sabbath. Right? Some of us, when we were growing up, hated Sabbath. We didn't look forward to it because it was a day that was surrounded by no fun. What are you going to do on it? Just sit and twiddle your thumbs and think about what happened? Like, oh, this is not a day to look forward to. And for those of us who didn't grow up in the church and hearing some of these things, you're like, can I sneak out quick now before I get engulfed in this? What is this about Sabbath? See, I want you to take a moment and try and maybe throw off all of the things you've walked in here today with. All of the things that you've been raised with as far as Sabbath. And I want to fully look at, okay, God says, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. I want to look at why does that matter? And what does Jesus actually come to do about it? Because Jesus has come to fulfill these things, and I want to show you how he fulfills them. Because really, when we look through the Old Testament, God is clear on obeying the Sabbath and remembering the Sabbath, but how that looks can be interpreted differently. Okay, so we're going to look primarily at the New Testament. We're going to look at two different scripture passages in the New Testament that speak about moments with Jesus and other people and the conversations that come about Sabbath from that. So the first one is in Mark 2, starting in verse 23. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and as his disciples walked along, they began to pick some heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are you doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" He answered, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need? In the days of Abiathar the high priest, he entered the house of God and he ate the consecrated bread, which is lawful only for the priest to eat. And he also gave some to his companions. And then he said to them, 'The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath.'" It's interesting. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Our next story comes from Luke 13. A very similar interaction. On the Sabbath, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues, and a woman was there who had been crippled by a spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and could not straighten up at all. When Jesus saw her, he called her forward and said to her, "Woman, you are set free from your infirmity." Then he put his hands on her, and she immediately straightened up and praised God. Indignant because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath, the synagogue leaders said to the people, "There are 6 days, so come and be healed on those days, not on the Sabbath." The Lord answered them, "You hypocrites! Doesn't each of you on the Sabbath untie your ox or donkey from the stall and lead it to give it water? Then should not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has bound for 18 years long, be set free on the Sabbath day from what bound her?" So it's the religious leaders primarily who have found fault in what Jesus is doing. They found fault in the things that Jesus is doing specifically on the Sabbath, and they've been looking to catch him in the wrong. Right now, we can't fully blame the religious leaders here because I believe their intentions were pure. I think they took the 10 Commandments and as a whole and wanted to obey those things. And because of that, they created a bigger box around them so that they would not break the 10 Commandments. So they make all these rules and regulations. And all of a sudden, for them, it's hard to distinguish what did God say and what did I design in this to be regulations. Right? So I think their intentions were good, but their heart was completely in the wrong place. They didn't realize the heart behind the nature that God gave this command to the people. So what did Jesus do? Right, when Jesus came onto this earth, I want to give this verse a minute. Matthew 5:17, he says, "He did not come that I have to come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." See, Jesus came to not get rid of the 10 Commandments, not get rid of the Sabbath, but to explain what you've made around the Sabbath, this box and all these rules and regulations, is not what it ever was designed to be. Or it was not designed for all of these things. This is a day that is supposed to give you life. Right? See, Jesus broke the man-made Sabbath regulations. He broke all the things that were man-made about it. He said, take it back to the basics of what I described this to be, what God said Sabbath was about. You see, Jesus healed, and he fed, and he brought animals to water, and he helped animals get out of wells that had fallen in. Right? He had talked about these things that many of the religious leaders were saying, no, we're not allowed to do those things. Jesus is saying, who said that? Right? Who said you couldn't do those things? Who said you couldn't ride a bike on Sunday? Like, where did those things come from? I have come to fulfill these. God said in his command, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. This understanding of keep it holy is really the first time we read this in the new commandments, in the 10 Commandments. Why does it come up in this? And what I think and what I've found is that God wants to make Sunday, or whatever day you Sabbath in, dedicated to God. You see, holy means something that is sacred or set apart for God. So for us, it should feel different than any other week because it's set apart, because it's different, and it should be different from our normal daily routine of life in and life out. And the day was made for us. So how do we do it? Or how do we actually make this happen in our lives? And I think the first thing we need to do is get rid of the excuses. Many of us have busy lives. Many of us have opportunities to do lots and lots of different things. Get rid of that excuse. It is time that you take ownership of your schedule. It's time you take ownership of your calendar. If you work a goofy schedule, if you're a nurse or a doctor or one of those occupations where the days shift around, look at the calendar at the beginning of the month after you get your work schedule and pinpoint 4 days where you can rest on Sabbath and remember the Sabbath and keep it holy, even if it isn't the day that other people are doing that. See, Sabbath is the one day where you get to truly find rest again. And I'm going to explain that in just a moment about what that looks like. But I think this line sums it up so well. It's the one day when the only thing you must do is not do the thing you must do. I'm going to say that again. It is the one day when the only thing you must do is not do the things you must do. So if you hate doing dishes, anyone else in that line? Like, absolutely hate doing dishes. If you hate doing dishes the night before Sabbath, make sure you go to the sink and you clean all the dishes, clean the kitchen to make sure that when you walk down on Sunday morning, everything's clean and everything's done and that you don't have to do the things that you hate doing. Do you sit at your desk all week long and you're inside a cubicle and you don't see the outside? Maybe for you, it is not being inside on the Sabbath. It's getting out and doing something different. Maybe for me, I love being outside and I love the smell of freshly cut grass. Anyone else? I have hay fever, so it's kind of killing me on the inside at the same time, but that's something else. I love it. I love mowing the grass. So for me, on my Sabbath, some of you may shake your head and walk out, but I mow the lawn on the Sabbath. I do. I love mowing the lawn. It brings me joy. I put in my headphones and I'm rocking out to anthem lights like hymns. And so like I'm singing at the top of my lungs and neighbors are gawking at me and pointing and laughing. But like I love it. For me, it brings me joy. I see the progress of the lines and it really warms my heart. And it when I'm listening to music, it truly does bring me closer to God. Right? For me, that matters. If you start by saying, here's a good rule that me and my wife have looked deeply into it. And if you're a book reader, this is a phenomenal book, The Rest of God by Mark Buchanan. Phenomenal. As we walk through this, I almost underlined this entire book because it's just got a lot of incredible stuff in it. But a takeaway in this for me was this idea that don't do things you ought to do. Because often we make lists. So for me, mowing lawn isn't something I ought to do. It's something I get to do. I get to go mow the lawn. I look forward to doing those things. For some of you, mowing the lawn is an ought to. See, the grass is long and you're like, I ought to do that again. I better get out there and mow the grass. Then for you, it's not mowing the lawn. All the things that we ought to, our list that we want to get done, have to get pushed aside on the Sabbath to enjoy what God has given us. You see, what I find so fascinating is that we can so easily become like the religious leaders. Or we can so easily say, this is what we're allowed to do, this is what we can't do. And I think if Jesus walked in and watched what we did on a Sabbath and watched some of us say, you can't ride your bike on the Sabbath, he'd be like, what do you mean? But does that bring our kids joy? Right? Does it allow them to ride around in nature, in creation, the things that I've given them to enjoy? Right? What does that look like? See, a few takeaways for today. And these come very specifically from how Jesus actively participated in Sabbath, because we see him do this in his life. And the first is this: focus on God. Focus on God. The point is not just to rest and relax and catch up on a Netflix show. It's to rest and relax in who God is. See, God has set this day apart. It is different. And if we are going to be God's people, we're called to live a different life. And this is a piece of that. So for me, I feel close to God when I'm going on a walk in nature. Often I put in headphones, but if I'm looking for a moment with God, then I'll leave my headphones at home and have silence. Because sometimes silence is hard for me. And I let the worries of this world, I let those drown out in my head when I have my headphones in. And sometimes it's in the silence where I feel closest to God. So on Sabbath for me, when I'm trying to get closer with God, I go on a walk. I go out in nature. I'm outside. I allow silence to be a part of my life. Maybe for you, it's journaling. And looking back and remembering how God had been faithful to you in the past. and it's writing to God about how you see him active in your life. Maybe for you, it's just literally sitting down with the Bible and reading through the story that God has given you. The story about who he is and his character and how we are his image and what that means for us as people, just diving into his word. And maybe for you, it's mowing the lawn. Maybe for you, that is how you connect with God. I had one lady after the last service say, "It is not that." I'm like, oh, maybe I should rethink that. So, first thing, focus on God. Second one is this: focus on friends and family. Look around to see the people that are close to you. Look around to see the connections and the relationships that you have. What we see throughout the Gospels is Jesus is often eating well with his disciples. Right? He takes the time to have meals and sits down at tables to eat with the people that he loves. Invite people over for dinner. Have people over for a game night. Find the people that give you life, where you laugh with them, and invite them over on Sabbath. Go out to the beach with friends. Ride your bike with your neighbors. Oh, crazy, I know. Right? You would think that these things should be a part of who we are in our life and a part of Sabbath. Reconnect with your spouse. Turn your phone off and sit and have conversation with each other. Talk about where you've seen God move in each other's lives. I think about the people that you enjoy and surround yourself with them. God has given them as a gift to be a part of your life. Enjoy the images God has given you, the image of us. Right? So we've got focus on God, focus on friends and family, and the last one is this: focus on serving. See, we see this throughout Jesus' ministry, especially on Sabbath. He seems to make a point of it, is serving. Right? He's healing people. He is making a point known of miracles that he is doing for people on the Sabbath. And I find it so interesting, even in my life, when I've got a task to do on my house or a chore to do, it often drains me. I don't look forward to it. I don't enjoy it in the season of it. But if I'm doing that very same thing at someone else's house, like if I have a friend call and say, "Hey, I had a tree fall down in my house. I need some help clearing brush." I hate clearing brush. I hate moving branches. It doesn't bring me joy at all. But if I'm doing it for somebody, with somebody, all of a sudden that same task brings me joy. And I'll leave there with more energy than I did walking in. It's the weirdest thing. You have people go on mission trips and work hard and serve hard, and they come back more energized. There is something about serving that God has given to us as a gift. Like, hey, go do this. Be a part of these things and serve. So we've got focus on God, focus on friends and family, and focus on opportunities to serve. And here's the golden rule of all of this. Find the things that give you and your family life and do them. Find the things that give them life. I think this will happen. When you find things and look for the things that give you life, and look for the things that give your kids life, and look for the things that energize your spouses, you'll find yourself connecting more with God. And you'll be pursuing those things because God has given those things to us as a gift. And look in those things to give glory to God. We are in a culture that is so busy. We are so hurried. And what would our world look like if people are wandering around and they see people just stopping and slowing down and laughing together and finding joy in life? Imagine the people that would walk up and say, "How do you get this? What am I missing that you have?" And for us as Christians, if we believe in the 10 Commandments and we believe those are for us today, that is what we get to speak to them. Right? This life, even though sometimes people read it as lists of things that we can do and cannot do. These are truly a gift, saying God's telling us this is the best way to live. I'm giving you this gift. As my people, you get to do these things. And Sabbath is very much the same as that. As people of God, we get to do something that this world only longs for. So what are you waiting for? Participate, obey, remember, and keep the Sabbath holy. Would you pray with me? God, I thank you for today. And I thank you for this chance to sit back and reflect on what Sabbath means for us, realizing it may mean something different for all of us. God, I ask that you help us pinpoint what brings us closer to you and what helps our faith journey. And God, open the doors for us to have those opportunities and help us make a point of those things in our lives. We ask this all in your name we pray. Amen.